Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you come back for the next episode covering the points of this conversation.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding @Prestigious_Pod.
Follow me, Mr. Kent, at Mr. Chris R. Kent.
Follow me, Chris Beane, at Chris Beane Official.
Join our Discord for exclusive content and personal interactions.
And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Beane, on one of my social media platforms, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousInitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website.
This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Beane, and here with me is Chris Kent. Hello, Mr. Kent.
Hello, sir.
Today we have a remarkable guest joining us. Yaron Been is an e-commerce entrepreneur, growth coach, and industrial engineer. Ron, thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Very excited to chat.
Very good. Hey, so just so we can understand a little bit about your background, can you let us know a little bit about where you came from and kind of what brings you here today?
Sure. So I guess I usually start with the fact that while I was in the Israeli army, I served in the special forces. And although I got a lot from the experience and I learned a lot about myself and encountered many challenges, and I was placed into life and death decisions on like a weekly basis, I also had a realization that I don't want any commanders. I don't want to work with peers. I just want to do my own thing. So I guess this is where my entrepreneurial journey started, by the realization that I don't want anyone above me. After that, I started working as a bodyguard actually in northern Mexico because I was in the special forces. So I was able to land this gig and I started studying. I studied industrial engineering. And soon enough, I started working in a media buying agency in Tel Aviv. And I was spending almost $1 million on a monthly basis and on Facebook ads. And I had no upside, no downside. It was kind of boring. And luckily, I met a friend of mine and we sat down for a beer and he showed me like a screenshot of his Shopify store. And until that moment in time, I thought that dropshipping and e-commerce is just like BS, that gurus are selling the courses, but nobody's really earning money from it. But it was a childhood friend of mine. So I said, okay, I have to do this. So the morning after, my wife and I, we built a store. And in the same evening, we got our first sale. It was completely random, a ton of luck, but it was amazing. And we realized we can make money online. So we kept on going while we were working as media buyers. Like while we were working 9 to 5, we scaled this business. Eventually, we both quit our jobs. We left Israel and we've been traveling since and also working online, doing e-com, doing marketing. But this is like a background, but I let you guys take over and ask questions. But this is it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious. Your journey from serving in special forces to becoming an e-commerce entrepreneur is fascinating. I'm curious. How did your background help to influence your approach to entrepreneurship?
Great question. And this is something that I only realized later on because it's hard to attribute what exactly like the special forces taught me. But one of the things that I'm a big believer of is the importance of velocity and putting in a ton of volume. So let's say in the army, when they want us to teach us how to shoot, they used to take us to the middle of the desert and we used to shoot in the shooting range for 10 hours straight for 5 days per week for 4 months. So eventually I learned how to shoot, so because you just put in the volume. Or when they wanted to teach us how to dive, so they would send us in the middle of the night, dive into the water and look for a tuna can. And we couldn't go back to shore until we found this tuna can. So we did this on a daily basis until we were able to dive good enough. So I think like the most important thing that I took away, and I took away a lot of stuff, it's the importance that you can also brute force your way into doing stuff. So it doesn't sound sexy, but I believe in brute force and volume.
Well, and it sounds like what you have or what you learned is a tremendous work ethic, because you had, like you said, you had to brute force your way. You had to put the time in, put the work in order to achieve those things. And I have to imagine that your your e-commerce entrepreneurship journey has to do a lot with the amount of work that you put in. And I would, I would perhaps argue that the amount of work you put in is directly dependent on the amount of return that you get from that work.
To an extent, this is correct. But to be honest, I think back in the days, I had way more drive, and also like the narrative that you live by when you're in the army. So it's a bigger narrative than what I have at the moment, like just making money and serving the world. So I think I don't have the same tenacity or aggressiveness that I used to have. But today I try to optimize or substitute this volume of effort with automations and using different levers just to increase the output, but without working necessarily harder.
Okay. Yeah. So you're using the tools that you have at your disposal to do some of the heavy lifting, and then you don't have to do as much.
Yeah, ideally, this is like what I'm striving for, and this is what I'm trying to build on a daily basis. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Now you have a track record of bootstrapping bootstrapping and scaling a 7-figure e-commerce store.
Mm-hmm.
What key strategies do you have, or have you found, that most effectively help in that e-commerce landscape?
This is a great question, and it's pretty hard to answer. Again, it's very hard to isolate exactly which variables work that I can attribute the quote unquote success. I guess the fact that I had a lot of experience running Facebook ads, as I said, I was already spending $100 million. $1 million on a monthly basis. So it gave me confidence, less the stupidity to spend also a lot of money from my own wallet on my own ads. So spending a lot of money is also a lever, because when you spend a lot of money, you accelerate time, you compress time, so you get results, good results or bad results faster. But I say any result is good. Any fast result is even better. So probably this. But in general, the e-com space is very dynamic and it changes very often. What most beginners do, which I think is a common mistake, is they enter the game without a business plan and without understanding the unit economics, like really understanding the profit margins, how the whole supply chain is working, how the numbers align. So a lot of people just start because they want to just start, which is great because you got to create the momentum. But on the other hand, if the numbers don't align, it doesn't matter what you will optimize. You can optimize your ads or your funnel 24/7, but it won't fix the numbers if their numbers don't align. So I think focusing on the numbers and planning them correctly with buffers, I think this is the key, and many people overlook this.
Well, and I can imagine that, you as you jump in, you kind of look over those things and you think, oh, I can do it because everybody else is doing it. And you don't understand kind of the work that is involved, or the extra knowledge that you have to know to be able to crunch those numbers appropriately and make meaning from those numbers, and how and really allow those numbers to inform your decisions as you move forward. That part is, I'm sure, glossed over or missed. And so you have to kind of understand that, and you have that background from being on Facebook and selling those ads there. So you have a little bit of that knowledge of how to crunch those numbers so you can help to use that to inform your decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Correct. And it's the chicken and the egg problem. It's somewhat of a paradox because you can't gain the real knowledge of the numbers until you mess around with the numbers. So this is why often when beginners come to me, I usually tell them, okay, look for a job just to get acquainted with the numbers and the jargon, stuff like this. It's not as if you can't do this on your own, but it's better to learn on the job when people are paying you, and then gain some confidence to do your own thing.
And I would imagine that there's a little bit of kind of testing things out. Okay, let's test this. Let's see if this works. Let's test this and see if this works. And, to a certain extent, you're throwing stuff against the wall and kind of seeing what sticks. Okay, that worked. Let's do more of that. And this didn't work. Let's do less of that.
You're 100% correct. I mean, a lot of people say or try to claim as if they have a methodology to solve this without throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks. And this is also something that like gurus are saying about dropshippers. Oh, these dropshippers are just throwing shit on the wall and seeing what sticks because they want to sell a methodology. But I believe, based on the countless experiments that I did, like 90% of the time I'm wrong. So throwing stuff on the wall and seeing what sticks, to me, unless there's someone who knows, like has a secret, a magic wand that I'm not aware of, this is the only way to really succeed.
Yes. Now, I understand that you're experienced in Web3 and cutting edge technology. How do you leverage AI and technology to manage your daily business ventures? And what opportunities do you see that creates in your space?
Yeah, so first of all, the AI space is moving so fast. So by the time we publish that episode, maybe all my advice is already irrelevant. So this is like a disclaimer that I feel obligated to mention. But in general, we talked before about the fact that I want to get more output for less input using levers. So one lever is capital. You pay Facebook ads and you get results faster. Another lever is using code. So you use AI, you use automation, and this can accelerate anything that you do. So for example, I just built, I had like this pain point or a bottleneck which revolved around launching Facebook ads. I was able to generate, or my video editor was able to generate 20 video ads per week, which is pretty slow. I prefer testing more. So I decided, okay, why not solve this with a lever, which is code. So I just wrote a Python code, which used a bit of AI to generate 1,000 variations. And so I was able to generate 1,000 variations of videos in like 2 hours, and no video editor can generate 1,000 variations in I guess 2 weeks. So this is a way to leverage AI and just produce way more ads. And I was able to test these ads, see what sticks, and this allowed me to produce lower CPAs, so increase the return on ad spend.
Wow. Yeah, that's a tremendous increase in such a short time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've heard that people have used AI to help create the descriptions of products on their websites, and that seems to be going pretty well for them. Is that something you have tried?
Yeah, obviously, this is like the stuff that is pretty obvious to me. So, like writing descriptions, writing ads, writing emails. This goes without saying. This is like I think is like the lowest hanging fruit for you to leverage AI, like content generation. But there is so much other stuff that you can do, which most of the people don't do, which using like AI for creating videos, using AI agents for like doing tasks, solving stuff. So content generation is like a low-hanging fruit. You should definitely check it out and use it. But there are even more layers that you can use in order to produce more.
Now, I'm wondering when you say that you use that AI to help you develop the 1,000 different versions of that video, is it like a faceless video? Is it a talking head video? Like what is that? What type of video is it? Is it just like I'm curious on that.
Yeah, so it really depends what you build. In my case, what I did, I took our best selling ads, which already consisted of, let's say, a hook, a testimonial, use of authority, and an outro. By the way, if I'm saying something that you guys don't understand because it's not the jargon, let me know. I'm happy to clarify. So we took 5 hooks, 5 testimonials, 5 uses of authority, and 5 outros, and we just sliced and diced and created all the variations. So let's say you have 5 by 5 by 5, so you're going to get 125 variations. So this is what we did, just slice and diced. But we also used AI for generating hooks like animations, like 2-second animation, which just grabs the attention of the person who is scrolling in the feed, and then transitioning into the original ad, for example.
Right. Well, yeah, and of course, creating hooks is the key thing, because that's how you get the attention of the viewer to pull them in. And once they've seen one, they're like, okay, no, I don't want that anymore. And there's so many people that are creating videos, creating content for social media or wherever, that it's hard to get hooks that will actually hook people in anymore. It's not as easy as it once was, because there's so many people doing it, and now we have people that are using AI to help to leverage that. And I think that's a wonderful tool that we have at our disposal to help to pull people in so they can get the actual content of whatever the ad or information is.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Now, hosting a Ecom X Factor podcast, you've had in-depth conversations about ecom, CRO, copywriting, marketing. What motivated you to start that podcast, and what have been some memorable moments in your interviews?
Great question. So I started this podcast 4 years ago. I think the main goal was increasing my English because my first language is Hebrew, and I wanted to. Yeah, my English isn't perfect, and you can tell by my accent. But this was the goal. My main goal was increasing like my ability to think faster in English, because when I'm speaking English, it takes way more effort from my brain to generate the questions and ask. So it was mostly a personal development move. But as time went by, it also was a tremendous opportunity to network with people, learn a lot. I also use it as a tool just to pick people's brain. So let's say I want to learn more about something specific. Let's say conversion rate optimization of checkouts. So I'm going to look for the best guy in LinkedIn. I'm just going to blast all the alternatives with an automation via LinkedIn. One is going to answer and hop on the podcast, and then I will be able to pick his brain. So I guess this is like one of the biggest benefits. And if I had to like distill my favorite takeaway, so I had this one episode in which I had David Henzel as my guest. David is a great guy, and he told me about, he has this story about I think it was his yoga instructor that asked him a very profound question. She asked him, "Are you acting from fear or out of love?" And although it's not necessarily related to ecom, it was a very profound question, and I still think about it till today, and it's been like 3 years or so. So I like this quote.
Yeah, and I have to say your English is really good.
Thank you.
So whatever you did to learn that did wonderful, very
Thanks.
good. And as far as using the podcast to kind of pick people's minds, and that is such a very important thing that sometimes gets missed over, because as the host of the show, we get to include the listeners into our conversation, but really as the host, you get to drive the conversation. You're pulling the strings, and you get to pull hopefully where you want it to go so that you can learn something. I tell you, I have learned so much from the guests we've had on our show, and it's wild. It's wild getting to sit down and meet with people from across the world, and people that are in all kinds of different sectors of life, and get to coalesce their information into something that is helpful for us, the host, but also for the listeners, so they can come on through that journey as well. So yeah, definitely, if anybody's listening and they're thinking, how can I interact with more people or learn from other people, or whatever that is, start a podcast. People come to you, they want to be on your show, you get to have that conversation with them, you get that connection with them. It's very meaningful and very beneficial.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
Now, your podcast, is that still ongoing?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So now, just because we're in the space, I always like to ask this. It seems like many of your shows are guest based. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you find that you get, of course, you'll get random people that are not random. You'll have leads that will email you and say, "Hey, I want to be a guest on your show," kind of out of the blue. You'll have people that will contact you through podcasting host and guest networking companies like Matchmaker, which I think is where we connected at. And then you have people that are guests that say, "Hey, I like being on your show, but I think this person also would be a good fit." Do you have that as well?
Like referrals from other guests.
Mm-hmm.
It happens, but not so often. Most of the people that pitched me are like podcast booking agencies.
Okay. Yeah, but as we're in right now. To be honest, we're booking people in December, which is funny. Right now, we're recording this. It's mid-April, and so we're booking people in December, which is kind of wild. We're actually I've been putting people on a wait list because I don't necessarily want to book people in 2025. And I hope that 2025, the next round, we can use the guests that we have that awesome conversation with them, build that connection, and then have them help to present referrals for other guests, and then have it be a guest, like all of our guests are then friends or were connected from other past guests. I think that would be a really cool kind of line to draw.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like a cool initiative. I must be honest, I don't feel that there is a lack of supply. I mean, there are a lot of people pitching to be a guest, so I'm declining like 95% of the people now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, your calendar gets so full, and you're like, okay, I don't know that I can withhold or withstand having so many people, and like I said, we're
Exactly.
booking so far out. Oh my, I don't know what I'm doing in 2025. I don't know how you can actually confirm a time for that, and then you book the time, and then somebody else books way after that because that time is booked, and then that time comes and you can't make it because whatever happens. That's tough.
Exactly. So I have like a very small window every week that I set aside, and if my backlog, I mean, if my scheduling if I'm covered for the next 2 or 3 months, I just don't take anyone anymore. I mean, I tell my personal assistant, don't take anyone anymore, because when we will need guests, it won't be an issue. It's pretty easy to find them.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. Now,
Yeah.
as a mentor, you've been dedicated to help others succeed in e-com. And what advice do you offer, or sorry, what advice do you often find yourself giving to aspiring e-com professionals? Like, what is your most frequent things that you tell them?
I don't think it's necessarily ecom related, but I'm a big fan of tracking religiously, just tracking whatever is important. So if it's your weight, if it's the amount of leads coming in, if it's your revenue, I'm a big proponent of tracking like a madman. Like every morning, you should know your most important numbers, and you should also have someone hold you accountable. So I truly believe that although some mentors are better, some mentors are worse, some coaches are better, some coaches are worse, but you get like 60 or 70% of the value by just having someone objective who is not completely nuts, giving you advice and holding you accountable. So this is, this is the truth based on, it's not the truth, but this is my perspective, my observation. So I think if you have someone holding you accountable and you're tracking your numbers religiously and you're seeing progress, and if you're not seeing progress, you adjust, you will hit gold eventually, unless you quit, but no reason to quit. So yeah, I think this is it's pretty simple, but it's not easy, but this is like my best advice.
Well, and of course, whatever you are tracking, like whatever gets measured gets managed is the quote.
Exactly.
And I believe that. So those numbers that you're in every day, that you're looking at, that you're tracking, that you're measuring, okay, how was it yesterday? How was it today? How was it last month? You're looking at those, you're in that data, then you're going to be more acceptable, more in that information when the time comes, if there's a change that happens, or when the numbers start to dip, you're going to know right away, and then you can do something to offset that, to grow and move forward from there. But if you don't know what those numbers are, then you have no way of judging where that dip is going to be, and by the time you notice it, if you're not tracking, you're too far gone.
Exactly. And there are two critical things that I want to mention about this. So first of all, some people, they track, but they track too much stuff, and then they have too much noise and they lose focus. And eventually what happens, they start seeing worse results. This is what happens usually, and it happens to me as well with regards, let's say, for weight. So I competed in a bodybuilding competition like 3 or 4 years ago, and then I said, okay, fine. After the competition, I had to gain weight, because usually when you go on stage, you're ripped and you're like in a huge deficit of calories. And afterwards, you're supposed to gain weight to go back to normal. So I said, okay, I don't need to track from now on. I can just gain weight in a comfortable pace. But the thing is, as soon as you stop tracking, pretty fast, you come to a point that you don't want to track anymore. And this is like the most critical point. when I became like 90 kilograms, which is already high for me, I didn't even want to look at the scale anymore. And this is like the most critical point, because this is the point that you need to go back tracking religiously. Or when your bank account goes to like a let's say emergency funds, and you don't want to open your bank account, the website, because you're just afraid to look at the numbers, this is the most important time to start tracking like a maniac. Because otherwise, as you said, you're too far gone and you will go below. Yeah, like I got to 95 kilograms, which is like my maximum. It's like very high. And only then it was even harder to recover, So I think it's very important to recognize the moment in time that you're afraid to look at the numbers, like the most important numbers. And it's going to be your weight and it's going to be your profits. For male, I think these are like the most important metrics, and at least maybe a few more, but this is like, I think for me and for many other people, if you track your weight and you track your profits, you're fine. So once you start feeling anxious about looking at the numbers, this is when you should like take a look at the numbers.
Yeah, it's like your subconscious is telling you, well, hey, something's not right here, and you have that apprehensive, you're apprehensive to look at those numbers, and so you're something inside. There's alarm bells going off, so at your core something's wrong, and that's the time that you need to start tracking those things. Yeah, that's a good notion to live by.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's painful, but it's unavoidable, because otherwise it will be even more painful afterwards.
Yes. Now, with over 30 million, with a hands-on experience with Facebook ads, you bring a unique perspective to paid advertising strategies. Can you share some insights into creating effective and impactful ad campaigns?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Again, it's all about testing very fast and never focusing on only one method, because the Facebook is a black box. You don't really know what happens with regards to the algorithm. The algorithm changes and nobody notifies you about this, especially if you don't spend a ton of money on a daily basis and you don't have a dedicated account manager in Facebook. Because I work with dedicated account managers, but these are for people who spend like $20K per day, $30K per day. But if you're just spending $200, nobody cares about what you're spending, and nobody will notify you if the algorithm changes. So for this reason, if something is working to you yesterday or working for you today, it doesn't mean it will work for you tomorrow. And a lot of people are like, they saw success with, let's say, automated bids, or let's say a certain structure of campaigns or ad sets. And whenever things go wrong, they just try to push again and again with the same method and the same structure or the same bids. While what I'm saying, I think you should have an open mind and keep on throwing stuff like on the wall and seeing what sticks, because sometimes bid cap work better, sometimes Advantage Plus campaigns work better. So stuff changes all the time. So you should always set aside like 20 or 30% for testing old stuff that didn't work and giving it another go. So this is one like crucial takeaway in my opinion. And the other thing, there is a lot of variables into the equation. As I said, it's a black box, many variables into the equation. Stuff that work for someone else, let's say your friend, or a different ad account of yours for a different offer, might not necessarily work for you. You got to understand there is seasonality. There is like the type of the geography that you're selling, your audience, your offer, the price points. So many variables in this equation. So it's good to ask for benchmarks, but I find it funny when people go to a Facebook group and ask a question, like a vague question about, guys, I see a drop in my CPA, or I see an increase in CPA. And yeah, of course, some people are going to see an increase in the CPA, some going to see like a decrease. There are so many variables. So what you have to do is test on your own and just try to beat the control. And the control is the result that you have today or you had yesterday. You got to get better results tomorrow. That's it. Don't care about what other people are doing. Benchmarks are nice, but at the end of the day, you have to have your own benchmarks. So it's mostly about testing, being open-minded, and just trying to beat your performance.
And really, from what I gather, you are continually testing. And I guess with that, how many ads do you have going out at one given time?
It really depends on what you're selling and who are you serving, but it can be like, it depends on the budgets basically, because you have if you have a ton of budget, so the amount of ads you have boils down to what game are you in. Some people, let's say, search arbitrage game is different from ecom game, but what game are you playing in? Your ability to spend. So if you don't have a significant amount of money to pour on each ad, so it doesn't make sense to spend like $1 per ad because you don't even hit a threshold of getting significant data. So this is the second factor. How much money do you have to spend per ad? And I guess the third factor is your ability to monitor all of this. So even if you can spend a lot of ads, well, a lot on different ads, but you don't have the ability to monitor and see what is working, so it's kind of stupid. So I guess it boils down to the game you're playing, your capacity, and your budgets. For me, for example, I have sometimes 1,000 ads running, can be even more, it really depends.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
how long do you have, let's say, one or a given ad up before you get reliable feedback on if that's beneficial? Maybe it's not a time-based, maybe it's a money-based strategy, but what do you have to offer on that?
Yeah, so because it is an equation with many variables, so time, like time of the day, time of the week, they do make a difference. So let's say if you're selling social casino ads, so you're probably mostly targeting female that are mostly spending from 9 to 12 a.m. when the kids left. So if you're only opening ads from a later time, so you're not getting the data, the real data. So this was just an example. If you're selling skincare and most of your customers are buying on the weekend, so you're going to see better results on the weekend in opposing to during the week. So the time frame, giving it also a long time frame is important. But on the other hand, obviously, if you spend more, so you're going to get more results faster. So it's going to be a combination of also giving it enough time because of the seasonality, like day of the week, time of the week, time in the month. So let's say if people are getting paid at the end of the month, most of the conversion is going to be higher during the end of the month. So this also matters. So these are all variables in the equation. And there is also an important variable, what is the product price? So if the product price is $100, so you're expecting to have a CPA of like, let's say maximum $100. So it's going to take pretty fast to spend $100. But if your product is is more expensive, I'm talking way too fast. If the product is more expensive, you need to spend more in order to get the data. So it depends on many variables, but as a rule of thumb, I would say if your product is a low ticket, let's say $100 maximum, if you don't see good results after spending 2 times the CPA that you're breaking even, I would pause. And I would also analyze like the CTRs, the click-through rates, the cost per add to cart. So upper stages in the funnel also give you like a good understanding of whether or not you're in the right direction. So there are a lot of variables, but I would say what you feel comfortable with, but not more than 2 times the CPA of breaking even.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for that feedback. I'm sure in your sector, you're always looking for ways to innovate and drive results. And what role does continuous learning and that ability to play, that game in the entrepreneurial journey offer for you?
Can you clarify the question? I'm not sure that I understood.
Yeah. So, as you are trying different things, I think you'll have to continually learn new information, new tactics, new ways of operating, new metrics perhaps to track, new ways to understand what the algorithm is doing today. And what role does that play in the entrepreneurial journey that you're on?
Great question. I think, first of all, I think continuous learning is a survivalship mechanism. It's necessary. It's not as if it's a nice to have. If you're not moving forward all the time, you're going to get destroyed in the business space, or yeah, you get what I mean. And back in the days, I still have like 7 principles which I try to live by, and one of them was Kaizen. And Kaizen is a principle from the Japanese culture, and I think it stands for incremental continuous improvement. And the incremental is also very important, because some people, and it also happens to me in some vectors of my life, they don't stick to incremental changes. They try to do continuous improvement, but sometimes you improve too fast. And when you improve too fast, it backfires on you. So, for example, yo-yo dieting. If you lose weight too fast, instead of just losing 0.5% per week, so you're going to go back up very fast. And if you're going to the gym, the people that buy like new Nike shoes and they buy the gym bag and they go to the gym all excited, they go 6 times per week. And after 1 month, they have they injure their shoulders. So this is because they did try to do like the continuous improvement, but without the incremental. And the incremental is important. It's crucial actually to avoid ruin. So back in the days when I used to every morning, I used to think about these 7 principles and how I'm going to implement each one of them in this day. And I still do. Like every morning, I sometimes think about these principles, and I'm just think, okay, what can I improve today, which isn't like too much of a stretch, in order to move forward. And there is this nice quote that I like. Tim Ferriss uses it. I'm not sure if it's his quote, but he says, "The good system you follow is better than the perfect system that you can't follow." And I love that quote, and I find myself saying it often. And yeah, I think this is what Kaizen or incremental continuous learning boils down to. Just finding something that you can keep on moving forward no matter what, but without killing yourself during the process.
Yeah, I have to say, I've heard of Kaizen before, and I thought that was such a unique way to think about continuous learning or continuous growth even. And my big takeaway for that was to do iterative testing, right? To try something and see if it works. So, literally kind of, throwing stuff against the wall. Okay, did this work? What was better about this? What was worse about this? And, like you said earlier on, 90% of the time I'm probably wrong. And well, 90% of the time I am wrong because I test it and I tried this. No, that didn't work. That was way worse, much worse than what I was doing before. But I tried something different. And I think that trying something different, that iterative journey that you're on, that little bitty steps at a time to try to get a little bit better. And in order to do that, you sometimes have to think outside the box. And in order to think outside the box, that means sometimes you have to try things that are wild and different compared to what everybody else is doing, which means you're probably going to fail. But it's through those failures that you get to learn. Okay, yep, I learned that's not it. And I learned this does work. And then you can kind of even take that iterative test, and maybe that iterative test has like 2 things in it. Okay, great. So now I'm going to try changing the order of these 2 things. Okay, great. Now I'm going to try to change just this one part of this one and then the other part. And there's so much small little steps that you could take on a daily basis that unless you understand that concept or have heard it before, be introduced to it, you have no idea the amount of improvement that you can make just on the daily things that you do every single day. The time saves. There's so much in those little moments, those little things that you can do every day to learn and grow. So Kaizen, yeah, I absolutely love it. That's awesome.
Awesome, great. And while you were talking, I kind of felt the urge to mention it's easy, sometimes easier to, I think there is a phrase from Latin, via negativa. So basically, eliminating stuff that doesn't work is sometimes even easier than trying to find what works. So I guess finding out what works via testing shit, via testing stuff that doesn't work. This is easier it's easier to optimize. Just eliminate the waste, eliminate the noise, eliminate the shitty food that you have in your home, eliminate the sets that are irrelevant in the gym, eliminate stuff. And this is it, at least for me, it's easier to move forward like this.
Well, and like we talked about already, how much of this can you offload to things like AI to do those things for you? Now we have those AI agents that are doing amazing things. You're kind of just on your own, which then you get to offload that task to some in this case something else to do that job, and then that frees you up to look at whatever else that you can do.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah. Now, through our conversation today, I can tell that you're passionate about sharing your knowledge. How do you balance between running your business and contributing to the growth and education of others?
Intuitively, I would like to say I don't try to balance because I don't see them as two different parts of the scale. I know it might sound like philosophical, but it's kind of the same thing. I mean, contributing to others by sharing knowledge and serving people and gaining money, I think it's pretty aligned. So I don't try to really balance it. And by the way, I'm getting a lot out of our conversation just now by sharing the knowledge. I'm gaining more than you guys are gaining probably, and more than the listeners. So it's pretty hard to say how a balance is. But I just look at my daily schedule and see what is the most important thing to me, in my opinion. What is the most impactful move that I can make? Which lever can I pull? So what we're doing now is pulling the media lever. So we're talking, and it's 1 to 2, and hopefully it will be 1 to N, because eventually a lot of listeners are going to listen. And I'm also having the capital level, which I'm running Facebook ads while we are talking. And I also have the code level, because I have automated LinkedIn and Facebook reach outs while we are talking. So every day I try to focus on what levels can I pull, because I also want to play a lot with my daughter. This is why I'm sweating like a pig here, because I just played soccer with her on the post before hopping on the podcast, So using these levers in order to free up time and do stuff that we enjoy. Although I really enjoy a conversation, but trying to optimize and get the most out of life.
And that's a really interesting way to look at that, by the levers. And the mindset that brings to me is, I pulled this lever. When I pull this lever, these actions happens, but it's so that I can do X, right? You pull a lever for marketing, you pull a lever for advertising, and those levers have different impacts, different meanings behind them. And you have, I'm sure, a list of let's say, again, we'll just keep going down this road. You have a list of levers that you want to pull in a given day, maybe that you need to pull on a given day, and you just kind of, okay, you prioritize, okay, this one, and then this one, and you do that with the mindset of knowing, when I do this lever, when I pulled this lever, I know that this is going to happen, and I need that to happen so that X, Y, Z, ABC can happen. And I know from our conversation already that you're a numbers guy, so you are really into, when I pull this lever, I know that these things are going to happen. I can watch those steps and track that and find out, okay, did this work the way I wanted it to? No, it didn't. Okay, let's change, let's learn and grow. And that, I think, is important. In You're right. It that balance doesn't become a balance anymore. It kind of takes that almost terminology or mindset out the window, because it isn't relevant in that conversation anymore, because you're the way that you're focusing on those different areas.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it also reminds me a conversation that I had with a mentor of mine back in the days. I also asked him a question about balance, and this is a bit off topic, but I think it's interesting. So I asked him, how do you balance the 4 vectors of life? So health, wealth, love, and happiness. And he said, you don't have to balance them, because when you say balancing, you imply that every one of them needs to have 25%. But you have to integrate them. And I like that because it's a kind of a shift of perspective, which I really love, because it's not about balancing, it's about integrating. So just sharing this perspective with you guys.
Well, yeah, and that's a really interesting part too, because of course we're told health, wealth, and love. Those are the areas that we want to have in our life. But all of the information that we hear about that is, we want to have a balance with that. But you're right, we can't necessarily balance, because it's not 25%, 25. It doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. You have to kind of think about that through a different lens in order for it to make sense for you. And the way it makes sense for you is different than the way it makes sense for me and versus him. And it's all different across the board. And so we have to try to figure out how we can incorporate those things to ourselves as we move on.
Exactly. So integration and not balancing.
Yes. Yeah. Now, as we're talking about e-com, and I'm sure it's tough. We talked about this already because it changes so rapid. Do you have any foresight into some potential, ways of the e-com landscape is going to change in the future so that you can stay ahead of that?
Very hard, and I try to avoid making predictions, especially these days. Stuff is moving so fast, like faster. Time is moving the fastest I've ever seen in the last year. So it's very hard to make any predictions, but I think it boils down again to the levers. So who has most capital to spend in order to acquire customers, and who has most ability to leverage code in order to increase their reach. So the companies who will win are going to be the companies that are using lever in the smartest ways. So while capital is almost a scarce resource, code is permissionless and it's available for everyone. So if you don't have a ton of capital, I think you can still win if you use code in a very smart manner.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. As we were talking, it's key that you have some different philosophies kind of at kind of almost at your core. And I'm wondering, do you have, I would say, maybe like a stoic philosophy and personal development? And how do those type of ideas or concepts overflow into your business?
Again, there is no, not again. I don't make a distinction between myself and my business. So this is like a philosophical, something that is important for me. I think I thought the other day I saw like a nice quote that I liked. Entrepreneurship is just a personal development journey disguised as a cash grab. So basically, and I tend to agree. So the more you develop, I don't even like the personal development and the phrase because it's kind of stupid, but you get what I mean. The more you increase your ability to live life better, I don't know what even that means, but you get the idea. You're also going to get more capital and more money from the world, hopefully. So I don't make this distinction. And I do try, as I told you, I try to live by, like, I have these 7 principles. And the first principle is stoicism. And stoicism, if I had to, like, really say it, like, in one phrase, is understanding what is within my control and what is not within my control, and just focusing on what is within my control. If I had, like, to really distill and dumb it down. So mostly when bad stuff happens, I try to understand what is within my control and what isn't. And actually, yesterday I had a very interesting experience. I entered Upwork. Upwork is like a marketplace for hiring freelancers. Do you know Upwork?
I do not.
Okay, so it's a marketplace for hiring freelancers. And I saw like this freelancer that I used to work with in the past. He was adding like 10 hours on a weekly basis and basically stole from me like $1,500. So it's not a lot, but my initial response was, I'm going to rip his head off. But after 1 second, it was amazing. After 1 second, I said, okay, first of all, it's your fault, because why didn't you monitor this faster? Second of all, you can easily make a charge back. So you have all the control of the money. You can just get the money back. And third of all, if he had to steal, so he probably needs the money more than you do. So, and it was like amazing. After like 2 seconds of being completely like, I had like these pre-realizations. I was very happy about this. And I think I can attribute this to Stoicism and studying Stoicism and reading Stoic philosophy every morning. So yeah, I think it's related.
Yeah, and what an interesting way that you were able to have that initial kind of gut reaction and then think about it and then come to that realization. And I can tell you, I have maybe not done as much studying of Stoicism as you have. I know I have studied it. I really like the philosophies that are in there. I do my best to try to live by them. And I have had times in the past similar to that where something will happen. And most of the time when it's happened to me, I'll hear it secondhand, like so-and-so did this, and they'll come at it with whatever perspective that they have. They're coloring it their kind of way. And I'll take it and I'll hear the kind of baseline undertone of what is actually happening. What is the meat and potatoes of whatever it was. And I'll say, oh, well, have you thought about it from this perspective? And that totally shifts their way of thinking about it. Like you said that, maybe if he had to steal from you, maybe he needs that money more than you. Something along those lines is so impactful. And if somebody would come up to you and say, hey, this person's stealing all this money from you, and you come at it from that perspective, oh my, what a difference in conversation that just changed. And what that did was that let both parties, now you came at it with that from that side, but the other perspective, the other person, most of the time from my experience, completely lowers their degree of attitude and offense that they have, and it diffuses that whole situation just because of that perspective shift. And what an impactful and meaningful way to do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, Alex Hormozi has this. He has like this nice saying that he's been pumping out lately. So he says that there can only be one person in the angry boat. So only one person can be angry. So if this person, it's kind of related. So let's say you gave someone a service and they were angry, you didn't deliver or something like this, and then you respond by saying stuff about yourself, or maybe making fun of yourself or being angry on yourself, you immediately diffuse the other side. So you give them an ability to shift the perspective. So it's just an interesting tactic to shift like the dynamics and the framing of powers in a conversation. Looking back, I'm not sure it's so related to what you mentioned, but still an interesting concept.
Yeah, and definitely something that we can take and move as we go forward. Now, Ron, I have to tell you, it's been a pleasure meeting with you and speaking with you, and having you share your wealth of experience and insight. So I want to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of our show today.
It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope the audience will enjoy it as well.
Very good. Now, before we wrap up, do you have any key thoughts or final takeaways that you would like to leave with our audience?
I guess we kind of covered like the most important core, I think, ideas. Tracking like a madman. If you're not sure, track your weight and track your income. Find someone to hold you accountable. It can be a friend of yours or just pay someone, a coach. It doesn't have to be expensive. So accountability and seeking levers. Try to pull levers as much as possible. I think these are like my best ideas.
Thank you. If our listeners wanted to get in contact with you, where could they go to learn more about you?
Yeah, so I think they can look up in LinkedIn or in YouTube. In YouTube, I've recently been mostly uploading stuff related to AI and leveraging agents because I think this is the future. So look me up in YouTube. It's pretty easy to find. Not too many other Yaron Beans in the space, so just look up Yaron Been.
Very good. Thank you. Listeners, thank you for listening. Be sure to follow our podcast and subscribe for more content. Until next time, stay prestigious.